Hi guys, it is Tiny Little Whispers ASMR, and today I have a bit of a different video for you. Really quick though, if you are enjoying this content and you're not subscribed, it would truly help me beat that YouTube algorithm if you could subscribe and allow others to see my content. The second thing, I have a new video on my second channel, and that will be linked down below. And I will also have a link to my husband's music video because it is still a killer song and still stuck in my head. Alright, so the topic of today's video is a pretty heavy one. I'm going to be sharing my journey, how I've dealt with anxiety with you guys. So if this is something that bothers you, this might not be the video for you, but I'm just going to share what I deal with, what I struggle with, and yeah. So we'll kind of go back to my early years. I can always remember, I cannot talk today. I always have remembered struggling with anxiety in social situations. I really struggled to make friends. I've always had like one really good best friend, and then everybody else was like, it was too much for me to handle. If I was going to school and things were consistent, so think like elementary school where you have the same friends, the same class, the same teacher, very easy for me. I could handle that pretty well. However, anything outside of that, think like once you get to high school and there's a lot more events like dances or things that are not normal, did not handle those very well. I would have major anxiety. Anything that I really had to do on my own caused some major issues. I remember I've always played music pretty much, and anytime I would perform with a band or an orchestra, perfectly fine, I could do it. However, anytime, I would play something on my own in front of people, did not go well. Yeah, I couldn't do it. I would have major anxiety. I would make it through, but I really don't remember how I was able to do that because my mind would go blank before those instances, and I would get really hot, sweaty, all that grossness. So fast forward a couple of years, I went off to college, and like I said, I always struggled to make friends. I would usually have one best friend, and my best friend and I decided to go to college together. Looking back, I don't think I would make the same decision. I think we were a bit codependent upon each other, but it was safe for me to know that, hey, we are moving out of state, but I've got my friend to fall back on if I don't make other friends. Now, I did make other friends, of course, in school, but I feel like it would have forced me to maybe get over some of my social anxieties had I basically been thrown into that pond on my own. Eventually, my roommate and she moved back home. She was, like I said, it was codependent. I had started to make friends because I wanted to keep our friendship but make new ones, and she wasn't into that. She really wanted us to be friends only, and she ended up leaving, so that was pretty sad for me. And that was the first time that I was somewhere new and alone, and that was a year into college. And I had other best friends then at that point, and started dating a guy from my school, and we dated for 5 years. It was a very long time. So of course, at that point, he kind of filled that best friend role for me. So I always kind of had him. So eventually I graduated from college and I was 21. And at this point, I really started to experience major anxiety. I had been diagnosed with PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, and that can affect your hormones. It is a hormonal imbalance, and that really affected me, and I believe caused a lot more anxiety for me. My doctor had put me on some hormonal birth control to just help with some of the side effects from the PCOS, but I think that made things a lot worse. So I had graduated, luckily got a job, but didn't really have any friends besides my boyfriend, and really struggled with making new friends. It was not easy for me. And at this time, I started to have some very negative thoughts. I would constantly obsess or worry that all my friends were going to just leave or abandon me, or that my boyfriend would break up with me, and things like that, just things that did not have a truth to them. They were valid fears because all of these things had happened in the past. However, they were valid in this situation. So at this point, I was having pretty bad headaches regularly, and I eventually started to get panic attacks as well. And I remember, I'm sure I'd had some earlier and they just weren't as bad, but I remember having my first panic attack, and I was at work and just could not calm down. I had to leave. I was able to compose myself enough to leave, but my heart was racing. My stomach just could not settle. It was very warm, and at that point I felt like I was gonna pass out or faint. Luckily I didn't, but that first panic attack, sorry, I have an itch here, basically just kind of started a snowball effect, and I got them pretty regularly. This was at least once a week, if not every day. I really really struggled. And that in turn caused my stomach to not be able to settle very well. I ended up having a very bad stomach problem at one point. I wasn't able to keep any food down, and eventually no water. And this wasn't like every day. It would be like one day I could wake up, keep food down. The next day, nothing. And I lost quite a bit of weight, and it was very concerning. So once I stopped being able to keep anything down, I had to go to the hospital, and there I assumed they were going to tell me it was a kidney stone. I've had a couple of those before. That always affects my stomach negatively. But they were just like, oh, we think you had some weird stomach virus. We can't really do anything about it. So they made me stay overnight and basically pumped me full of electrolytes, used the IV, wouldn't let me leave until I could keep food and water down. But the whole time I was there, like, my brain was just, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, what if your friends leave you? What if your boyfriend breaks up with you? You have no one. You're gonna have to move back home. What if you lose your job? Like, all this crazy stuff. So at the time, I still really did not realize that it was mainly panic and anxiety. So, I left, followed up with my regular doctor, and it was there that she diagnosed me with a generalized anxiety disorder. And that was pretty tough at that time. She put me on some medicine, but that really affected me more negatively, so stopped using that. And that's typical for me. Like, nothing against people who need medicine. My body just typically doesn't handle it very well. I get nauseous for most medicines. So I dealt with those panic attacks and those negative thoughts for pretty much 5 years of my life, constantly. I saw a therapist during that time, and at that point, I was having just negative feelings, most likely stemming from my hormones. However, instead of my brain being able to tell me, hey, there's not really anything you need to be anxious for, it would basically lie and just, if I had an anxious feeling, my brain would tell me, oh, you're anxious because you are going to get fired, or this terrible thing is going to happen. So it was just my head lying to myself. And I had a therapist once tell me that our brain makes pathways, and we dig them deeper and deeper, the same pathways, each and every time we start to kind of think about our anxiety and let our mind kind of run amok. So she helped me learn how to break those habits and stop, going down that same trail that I'd gone down a million other times. And so now, luckily, if I have anxiety that creeps up and it's not related to something specific, I can usually acknowledge that and move on. However, I still very much struggle with anxiety related to specific things, such as when we bought this house, that was a physical thing I was anxious for. I'm trying to think, there was anxiety surrounding getting married, things things like that, I still cannot control that. So if you have any tips on that, please let me know down below. I recently went off that hormonal birth control, and that has drastically helped a lot of my anxiety. It's still there, but it has helped. I believe that now if I went to the doctor, they would not diagnose me with the generalized anxiety disorder, but instead diagnose me with high functioning anxiety. I still struggle with a lot of things, but it's not so detrimental that I can't do anything, or it really affects like my job at this point. So now what I struggle with most is getting up, getting out of bed. It's very hard for me to accept that the day is getting ready to start. Like, I don't want to do it. So that's pretty difficult for me. I will lay in bed a lot up until the point that I have to get up for work. At that point, I'm able to get up. But, it's just, there's a lot that goes on in my mind before getting out of bed. So that's always been a struggle. I still definitely struggle with making friends. It's easy for me to talk to someone now. I've kind of had to learn to do that with the job that I have. I manage people, so I've really been able to kind of get over a lot of those types of social anxieties. However, if it's related to a friend, oh gosh, I'm the worst at making like close friends because I constantly overthink, and my brain is always telling me like, they don't want to hang out with you, you're not fun, you're not cool, they pity you, and I hate that feeling. So that is something that I still to this day very much struggle with. Social anxieties. I feel like I'm the worst friend ever. Now, over the course of my life, I have lost a lot of friendships. So that's been a struggle for me, just, reliving that quite a few times. So I believe that's where that anxiety stems from. I constantly feel the need to work really hard, like a workaholic almost, but then at the same time I procrastinate. So I'll procrastinate, then I'll work really hard, overburden myself, and burn out. So I've learned that about myself over the years, and now I put some pretty good systems in place so that doesn't happen as much. Getting organized really helps me cut down on that feeling a lot. I'm definitely a perfectionist, which can be a part of anxiety. I feel major anxiety when things are not perfect, or what I view as perfect. So, if I am performing somewhere and I mess up, I get really mad at myself. I will beat myself up for any small, minor mistake that I might make. And I'm also a major people pleaser. So I'm still trying to learn to set boundaries and learn when it is okay to say no, because that is perfectly acceptable to do. It's just difficult for me to say. I'm very loyal to the point of fault. Like, I used to teach lessons at a music school, and I knew that I had wanted to stop teaching there. It was just too much on my plate. I still do teach lessons, but just privately from my home. So there was so much anxiety surrounding quitting there that basically I had to wait for the owner, like they sold the business to another couple, and that was an okay time for me to leave, I felt at that point. But yeah, I'm loyal to a fault. I get very anxious if I'm not loyal. So yeah, that is my story with anxiety. It's still a journey. It's ongoing. I definitely have friends now. My husband and I, we have friends through the current church that we're attending. I have friends at my work, so that's great. And they know that, I struggle with the anxiety. But it's still there. It's still prevalent. And something that has truly helped over the years is when I'm having an anxious day, I'll let my husband know. And this is so great. He says to me, "What do you need from me today? And what can I do to help?" And that is just, if you know anybody with anxiety, the best thing you can say. Don't say, "Oh, don't worry." Okay, that's not going to stop it. You're still going to worry. Just validate their feelings. "Hey, I'm sorry you're feeling that anxiety. What do you need from me?" Sometimes I need to vent. Sometimes I just need help around the house. Sometimes I don't really need anything at all. But that's the best thing. So yeah, if you struggle with anxiety, definitely let me know down below how that's been going for you. I know with the way the world is nowadays that anxiety is prevalent now more than ever. So yeah, thank you for listening to my story and taking part in this with me. And I'm so thankful that you are here. I hope you have a great rest of your